Okay, welcome to everybody here that's joined us here in council chambers for a meeting of the Poquoson City Council. If we could all please rise, I'll lead you in the prayer and pledge of allegiance. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and for the many blessings we have received in our city. As we move forward this evening on various issues, guide us. As we serve the community in the coming days, strengthen us to do what is right. And Lord, we especially ask that we stay mindful of those in need. Tonight again, we ask for your blessing and your presence, that it be felt by those who serve our country, as well as our public safety employees who serve our nation, our state, and our city. Guide and protect them and bring comfort to their families as they protect all of us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What's this one? Oh, there. That's just one for me to sign. Okay. It's always a pleasure to be here, especially when we are honoring people in our community or honoring events that have happened. I have a certificate of appreciation, and Jennifer Mostetler, is she here? Please come and join me. Jennifer has served us on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board from June of 2015 through 2017. And this is our opportunity to thank her for her service to our community and for everything that she has brought to that board. And in general, just to say thanks. Thank you. Okay. And now this is a proclamation in recommendation and commendation of an individual that's here in the audience tonight. And that's a Mr. Keith Fye. And I think that, just so that everybody knows, I think you tricked yourself into thinking that we're doing something that's really benefiting the Lions, and I believe the Lions are all here for you. Well, let me tell you that I've been on a couple of sites where Mr. Fye has done great things for our community, and we can't let that go by and not thank him. So this is a proclamation in recognition and commendation of Mr. Keith Fye, and it says, whereas Keith Fye was very capably and with distinction served as the president of the Poquoson's Lion Club and is now serving as chairman of Parks and Rec Advisory Board. And whereas under Keith's leadership, the Poquoson Lions Club adopted South Lawson Park as a community project and has provided soccer goals for all the fields and planted shade trees around the walking paths. And whereas Keith organized the Lions to collect and exchange plastic bags for Trex park benches and then placed 8 Trex park benches around the walking path at South Lawson Park at no cost to the city. And then Keith obtained the Lions Club International grants for the purchase of playground equipment and hundreds of hours of volunteer service, which was spent to erect the equipment at South Lawson Park, for which the Poquoson residents enjoy. And then Keith recognized the need for a licensed playground equipment inspector, so he volunteered his time to enroll in the National Parks and Recreation Association Certified Playground Inspector course, and upon passing the course, received national certification as a playground inspector. And whereas Keith is an inspiration to all of us here in Poquoson by his dedication and commitment to making Poquoson a better place to live, now therefore be it proclaimed by the Council of the City of Poquoson that Keith is hereby recognized and commended for his many years of outstanding community service and for his caring spirit for our community. And this is dated the 24th day of June. So I'm sorry it took you so long to get The mic is open to you.
Thank
sir.
you very much. Yeah, I was kind of hoodwinked. I didn't realize this was for me, so I called the Lions. They're probably going, you tricked us to come down here so you could get an award. I guess it worked. But, you know, we don't do this alone. We were inspired by the Parks and Rec people, Dave Callis and Gretchen and the folks down there to kind of jump in and do this several years ago. And then when I got to meet people like Tom Jones and Milt down at Public Works, I mean, there's just a bunch of great people, and they're willing to do and guide us on our way to make sure that it's what we need to have done at the right time in the right place. So I appreciate this, and I accept on the behalf of the Lions Club and everybody that helps us do what we can do for the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Randy, do you have a couple of introductions to do?
I have one introduction, and with the council's indulgence, I'd like to do two things. First, the introduction. Call forward Tanya O'Connell. Tanya is our new finance director. She is a CPA with a bachelor's degree from CNU and has worked for the finance department in Newport News for approximately 18 years. Prior to joining us, more than 10 of that as assistant director. She and her family are residents of Poquoson. And what did I leave out, Tanya?
I think you covered it all. I've been volunteering here in Poquoson now for 10 years with the youth leagues that we have, and just recently been kind of coursed into the volleyball as well with Parks and Rec. So I look forward to many years of that.
You got to watch the Parks and Rec director, just so
Gretchen's
you know.
tough. Yeah. Gretchen's tough on us.
Yeah. Tanya, welcome. You got big shoes to fill, but you have the credentials
Absolutely.
and the love of Poquoson to do that.
Perfect.
And we know, I talked to you briefly the other day. We have a lot of things going on in finance, but I know that you're up to the bill. So-
Absolutely. Look forward to working with everybody and the citizens of Poquoson.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, if I could,
Yes.
ask your indulgence, just because I think we have more people watching, and we certainly have more people in attendance than we may have by the end of the meeting.
Yes.
If I could take a minute and just read for you an emergency bulletin that we put out this afternoon. We put this bulletin out because of the storm that will be off the Virginia coast tomorrow and moving through our area. With all the attention of the even worse storm that's going on in Texas, this may not have been on folks' minds. So we wanted to take a moment and go the extra mile and make sure that you know that we're going to have a significant event tomorrow. The National Weather Service has issued a high wind watch, which is in effect for Poquoson in our area through tomorrow evening. A high wind watch means that there's a potential for hazardous high wind event with sustained winds of at least 40 miles an hour with gusts almost to 60. Such winds have the potential to damage trees and down power lines, and that's one of the reasons that we did this today. We're not expecting major tidal flooding, but the folks that live in areas that are prone to tidal flooding should be prepared for minor to moderate flooding tomorrow, particularly around the high tide of the day, which is about 3:40 in the afternoon. If you live in an area that is routinely subject to tidal flooding at the moderate level, we encourage you to take precautions for that. We encourage everyone to take precautions with the anticipated high wind, which means securing loose items around your property, taking in the flags, things like that, securing your trash cans. We also expect tomorrow between 1 and 3 inches of rain. So given all of that, we wanted to make sure that folks knew that something was coming tomorrow and ask you to take precautions to protect your property, as is often the case whenever we suggest to people to relocate vehicles from a flood-prone area. We have exercised our agreement with Langley Speedway. Langley Speedway is available in its visitor parking areas to park any cars throughout the duration of the event tomorrow and into the next day. The only thing they ask is, when it is safe to do so and the watch is expired, please do remove the vehicle. They're preparing for a significant event at Langley Speedway this evening. And thank you for that, sir.
Thank you very much, and we always thank our partners at Langley. They have partnered with us to allow our citizens to take their property to higher ground. And as well, don't forget that 1 to 3 inches of rain on top of a storm tide means that the drainage systems work slower. Not that they don't work, but they do work slower because of the head of water that they've got to drain to. So keep that in mind as some neighborhoods are prone to rain flooding. So make sure that you're prepared for that. And our prayers are with the citizens in Houston and that whole area. Guarantee you there are small towns just like us out there that are going through this. So thank you, Randy, as well deserved, well said. And also I noted as I drove in here tonight that Virginia Power was pre-staging. So I think everybody probably saw that, right? So that was a good reminder. All right, now it's time for audience for visitors. If you're not here to address one of the subjects that are on the public hearings this evening and you want to talk to us about something unrelated to those, now is that time. Would anybody like to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bob McCracken. I've been a resident of Poquoson for 13 years, and my wife for significantly longer than that. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'll keep it very brief. I sent an email to, I think, most of you last week. I'm not quite sure it made it to everybody. It was just a very basic proposal. It almost wasn't even a proposal. It was a basic concept or an idea of creating, expanding, phasing in bike lanes on some of the major roads here in Poquoson. I certainly realize that I'm not the first one to think of this, and I also realize that it's a pretty extensive project, but I'm an avid biker, and I bike on these roads 2 to 3 times a week, and I see it from both sides. I see it from the side when I'm biking down Little Florida, and I could be a whisker away from being in a ditch. I also see it from the person who's in the car coming home from Langley on Wythe Creek, and they have to try and get around me. It was then suggested to me after you guys reviewed it that we maybe create a work session to maybe roll up our sleeves and talk more about this. As I've been driving around thinking about this for the past 7 days, there are some roads where this might be a whole lot easier than others. I was looking at Poquoson Avenue, and the telephone poles are further out than they are on Hudgens. I can't even imagine trying to do that on Hudgens as far as what it would take, but that would also be a road where it would be significant to see that. So that's basically it. I have not created a fancy proposal. I thought that'd be a little presumptuous of me to do that. There are probably people that know a lot more about this than I do. I know about it from the side of being a resident and loving to bike these 22 miles when I go point to point to point and come home and just wish that I had that extra 5 or 6 feet. So I don't know if what we do at this point, if a work session is in order, but I wanted to bring it to the council.
Thank you very much. And as I promised you that we can regather the council, talk about bike paths. I will tell you that, and Randy, I would like to combine this with, we're getting ready to talk about traffic safety. We try to do that once a year for different intersections.
Sure.
And I think we can brush this subject off and talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there's an item on here this evening. VDOT is here to talk about Wythe Creek Road. So,
Okay.
That's something we've been working on as far as
Sure.
doing the very same thing.
Okay.
So we will put you on the list to make sure that you are notified when we're going to have that.
Great.
And it should be probably before, in the next few months. Sure. Okay?
As appropriate, I'd love to be involved, so thank you. Great. Thank you for your
All right.
time.
Anyone else that would like to speak about a subject that's not a public hearing? Okay, if not, then I'll close the audience for visitors and ask council for approval of the minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes of our regular session of July 24th, 2017.
Somebody going to second that?
Second.
Okay. Didn't know if they would leave you alone on the minutes there, buddy. But, okay, so we have a motion made and seconded that we approve the minutes of the regular session. Questions or comments? If not, Judy, please.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman, Councilman Hux,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
and Mayor Hunt. Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Very well. Next item on the agenda here is public hearings. And Randy, I'm thinking that we can combine the brief for items 1 and 2. And the item 1 is the proposed amendments to the city's land use map to designate property on Victory Boulevard, known as tax map parcel 18, TAC 1, TAC 19, as general commercial. And then item 2 is the proposed rezoning of the Economic Development Authority property, which is the same tax map parcel located on Victory Boulevard from research and development to general commercial. So we'll combine the brief, and then we will most likely combine the public hearings. So with that being said, Randy.
Shannon is prepared to lead the consolidated brief.
Very well.
I would respectfully suggest that when it comes to public hearings, you actually do those sequentially.
Okay.
But the brief certainly can be done at one time. And I think it's actually important to help everyone who may be wanting to comment to understand the totality of what's being considered rather than take it into component pieces. Dana?
Okay. So good evening, everyone. I will be presenting a combined presentation for both a future land use map amendment and a rezoning request for parcel 18-1-119 of the EDA assemblage. So I'll begin with some background on the assemblage. It consists of 6 parcels directly north of City Hall Avenue, fronting Victory Boulevard on the north. Now, these parcels were purchased piecemeal by the EDA between 2002 and 2006. Historically, they have been marketed as a whole for commercial development. The parcel in question was acquired in March of 2005. It is currently zoned R&D for research and development, and it is a rectangular parcel of about 2.5 acres. So here is an aerial map of the parcels in question. The one that's under consideration tonight is the one on the left. It is colored blue, and it is currently zoned R&D. The remaining purple section is the remainder of the EDA parcel. It is currently zoned GC for general commercial. So the proposed requests are to amend the future land use map to designate that parcel from research and development to general commercial, and then a rezoning request for the same parcel from R&D to general commercial. The purpose of this request, which was brought by the EDA, was to better market the assemblage as a whole to prospective developers. Now, a little background on these land use categories. The general commercial zoning category is for general commercial development, specifically within the Big Woods area. It includes all uses permitted in other commercial districts. It's the B1 and B2 districts. It also has higher landscaping, architectural, stormwater, and road access standards than the other commercial zoning districts. The R&D district is for office, manufacturing, and light industrial development within the Big Woods area. This is specifically to promote campus-style planned industrial or office development. Now, these zoning areas and their present boundaries have existed within the Big Woods since 1995. Some more background on the GC district. These are the uses that are permitted by right. They are all uses in the B2 general retail district, subject to the conditions in that section of the zoning ordinance. Also are the uses permitted by the B1 district, which is office and professional. In addition, the following uses also require both a conditional use permit and a traffic study for Victory Boulevard. And that includes grocery stores, shopping and department stores, drug stores, medical facilities, public structures, drive-in restaurants, hotels, and motels. Now, the adjacent land uses, all parcels to the north and west of the assemblage are zoned R&D. All parcels to the east are zoned general commercial, and all parcels to the south are zoned village commercial. Now, all directly adjacent parcels are undeveloped. The only nearby developed parcel is the commercial park on City Hall Avenue that is currently occupied by State Farm and a number of other office professional uses. So here's another aerial map with the EDA assemblage outlined in black. This is a zoning map. As you can see, everything to the west outlined in light blue is research and development. Everything in purple is general commercial, and everything in the beige color is village commercial. And this is our future land use map. You can see it roughly reflects the same categories as the zoning map. Again, everything light blue is research and development, everything purple is general commercial, everything gray is village commercial. So that's the end of the presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions that you have.
Questions of council? Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so we do have two public hearings. I'll go ahead and handle them separately. The first is a public hearing, and we will then take action on proposed amendments to the city's land use map to designate property on Victory Boulevard known as tax map parcel 18, TAC 1, TAC 119, as just explained. And I'll open the public hearing and ask for those that would like to comment. Is anybody in the audience that would like to make a comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and ask council for consideration.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution approving an amendment to the city's future land use map to designate the zoning of Poquoson tax map parcel number 18-1-119, located on Victory Boulevard as general commercial.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we change the city's land use map and make all of those properties general commercial. Questions, comments by council? Anybody?
I have a general question about, we have a land use map, and then we decide what the current use will be. So why do we have to do this twice? I don't understand the procedure. We're putting it on the land use map, and then we're changing it to commercial. So it would seem to me that if we change the zoning, then the land use map would just automatically reflect that. Would you talk about why it don't?
I'll try, and I'll look for Debbie to throw in on this too. I believe you could do it that way. Traditionally, we have had particularly where you start, as we did in 1975, with what was on the ground. What's on the ground may not be what's the ultimate plan for a piece of property as you think over time. So in our case, making sure that the future land use map and the zoning are changed together is a way of sort of moving in that direction. That's the best I got.
I'll be, because we found a property not too long ago that had gotten missed because basically the two pieces of paper go through two different circuits. So one is going to change the zoning on the parcel. It's getting recorded by the treasurer's office and the assessor's office and all of that, and the other is being done by the zoning map. So we had a property that was in the wrong zone and found it that way, so I kind of like keeping them separate. So, and I do remember that one. I'll brief you on that after this meeting.
It just seemed like, and I didn't know if the
It
public
does.
understood that
Yeah.
once we make a zoning decision, that it would automatically go with the,
Yeah, that's
onto the land use.
kind of why I was thinking we could do both at the same time. but-
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so anyway, we have a motion made and seconded that we approve this land use map. No other questions or comments? Then Judy, please.
Councilman Canella?
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Councilman Hux?
Aye.
And Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, the next item is the rezoning of the Economic Development Authority property, tax map parcels, the same, 18, TAC 1, TAC 119, from R&D to general commercial. Is there a motion on this? Oh, okay, well, I'll open the public hearing. Does anybody would like to speak about this subject? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and now ask for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution approving the rezoning of Economic Development Authority property, Poquoson tax map parcel number 18-1-119, located on Victory Boulevard from research and development to general commercial.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. We approve this one also. Any comments by council? Okay, seeing none, Judy, please.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Councilman Hux?
Aye.
Councilman Canella?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
And Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay. The next public hearing this evening is a proposed amendment to Appendix A, Article 1, Section 1, Tax 17. And this is in dealing with the keeping of farm animals as it pertains to keeping of chickens, roosters, miniature horses, pygmy goats, and permitting process for farm animals. Randy, how would you, who would like to do this presentation for us?
Dannon got the short straw again. Dannon will present, but Debbie's here as well, and Sherry Coffey, who handles a lot of our interaction with citizens that have farm animal permits and assists with the inspections, is here in case she's needed to answer a question.
All right, so be giving a presentation on the proposed amendment to the City Farm Animal Ordinance. I will begin with background on previous discussion on this subject. This proposed amendment was first brought to City Council in a work session on March 27th, and it was first discussed by the Planning Commission in a work session on April 17th. From that point onward, the Planning Commission received a number of citizens' comments, mostly regarding chicken and beekeeping. On May 11th, there was a site visit for Planning Commission members with some local beekeepers. It was discussed in a second work session with the Planning Commission on May 15th, and finally, it was amended and recommended for approval in regular session on June 19th. So the findings of the Planning Commission through this process were as follows: that there is no need for new beekeeping regulations at this time, that additional chicken keeping regulations would be burdensome and difficult to enforce, that miniature and pygmy animals should be considered the same as regular hooved animals pertaining to the existing language in our ordinance, and finally, there was consideration of a ban on roosters. It was ultimately determined that they should not be allowed, with an exception for working farms, properties over 3 acres, or with a valid conditional use permit. So I'll go through the proposed changes in Farm Animal Ordinance. The first is in Section A, which states that farm animals, excepting animals kept as indoor pets, may be kept in the city subject to obtaining a use permit in the following conditions. This line was added just to clarify existing city policy regarding what is regarded as livestock regulated by this ordinance and what is considered an indoor pet that is not subject to this ordinance. The next section, dealing with hooved animals, there's a line added including miniature and pygmy animals. This explicitly includes miniature and pygmy animals under the existing regulations that we have for hooved livestock, such as horses. Next is Section A4, and there's a new section added to apply to chickens or fowl. Subsection A is an existing language that was pulled into a new section in this ordinance. Subsection B is new language stating that roosters can only be kept in the city on parcels or agricultural estates measuring 3 acres or more. However, for parcels measuring less than 3 acres, a conditional use permit would be required for the keeping of roosters. Finally, there are some changes to Section B regarding permitting requirements. We have added a new fee for farm animal permit renewals. It is a $15 annual fee. However, we have specified that this renewal fee, as well as the notification of adjacent property owners for annual farm animal permit renewals, will not occur unless the applicant has increased their number of permitted animals. So if someone has a farm animal permit and if the condition and number of the animals that they keep has not changed, we will simply inspect their property and then reissue their permit free of charge. And those are the proposed changes. I'll be happy to take any questions that you have.
Council, you have any questions?
I have a rooster question. It said not allowed under 3 acres without. What about people who currently have a rooster and are on under 3 acres? Are they grandfathered? Or would they now have to get rid of their rooster?
What we would say would be we would probably keep some sort of a record of roosters that exist at the time of the passing of this ordinance. During the next farm animal permit renewal, we'll have to check and see whether or not they had previously existed. However, we will not be permitting any new roosters to come into the city. There will be no one getting a permit for, say, any new roosters. We'll not permit them. So it'll simply say that someone was allowed to have a certain number of chickens. And that will keep track of that on a yearly basis based on permit renewals.
So they could keep that rooster until it passed away.
Right, of natural causes, just living out its life.
I have a couple of questions. What is the impetus for treating miniature animals different than larger animals? I can't imagine a pygmy goat or a pygmy horse or whatever requiring the same amount of room and space as a full-bred stallion, for instance.
They don't.
Okay.
We went through a number of revisions of different types of language, and we tried to come up with numbers for how much square footage would be proper for the keeping of a small animal like this. The difficulty is in coming with a provision for miniature or pygmy animals. It's one thing for a horse, it's another for a goat, it's another for any other type of miniature animal like a cow or anything else. And they all require different amounts of space and different conditions to live. So we tried to come up with different language, and then people started coming up with, well, what about this animal? What about this animal? Ultimately, the Planning Commission decided that it was simply too difficult to try and come up with an ordinance for miniatures, and it said, we'll simply use the existing language for hooved animals.
Okay, and there are two other questions. Number one, do we have a problem in the city as a result of this? I'm not aware of any problems in the city as a result of that. And my second question is, again, about beekeeping. I remember at one time when we discussed it before, I was convinced we didn't need beekeeping regulations. It says no changes to the beekeeping regulations, but it's my understanding we don't have any beekeeping regulations.
That's correct.
Okay.
We don't have any beekeeping regulations.
And, you know, there are people in the city that are extremely allergic to bee stings, that if they get stung, they have to give an immediate injection, go to the emergency room, and not having any ability to protect themselves from somebody who might want to move next door and set up bees and create a problem for them might be an issue. Now, I have to admit, I was invited by a couple of apiaries to come by and see their apiary and have explained to me, and I have not yet taken advantage of that. I intend to do that. But I'm not convinced that we don't need to do that right now. And I forget the reasons why I was convinced otherwise last time, but it comes back to me that it may be an issue.
Right. We did go through a number of drafts which had language regarding the keeping of bees, and went through a number of iterations to try and make that language fit. But at the end of the day, the Planning Commission decided that there was no real pressing demand. They did not see any beekeepers in the city that were in non-compliance or doing anything particularly endangering to adjacent property owners.
And I don't know of any of them either. As far as I know, all the beekeepers we have are doing it well, and there are no issues. Okay? My concern would be for someone who might want to start a new one, and there's no regulation there for the new ones.
Okay, so there's no beekeeping thing in what we're currently looking at, so if we want to talk about whether we want to add them, then we'll do that during the deliberations. But you're clear in saying that there's nothing in here on beekeeping.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, any other questions?
I guess, in regards to the beekeeping, so currently, if a problem did arise, there's nothing in this ordinance, like a general statement, that would allow a citizen recourse through the city.
That's right.
Is that correct? There's
Correct.
none? Okay.
If we don't have an ordinance, they can't be either in or out of compliance because there's no compliance.
That's correct. All right, any other questions there? Thank you.
Okay.
All right, this is a public hearing, and we'd like to hear from the public as far as their thoughts on keeping of farm animals as it pertains to keeping of chickens, roosters, miniature horses, pygmy goats, and the general permitting process for farm animals. So I'll open that public hearing and ask if there's anybody that would like to speak to council on this subject. Yes, sir. And if you could, just let us know your name and address.
My name's Larry Bartram. I live at 21 Layden Way and have a next-door neighbor who has chickens.
Yes, sir.
And up until recently had several roosters until we complained about being awakened at the wee hours of the morning and listening to roosters crow all during the day. So if this 3 acres thing, I'm not sure how many chickens you allow, that wasn't covered. I don't know if there is a limit, but every time I look over there tends to be more and more chickens. I've talked with my neighbor about it, and she says, well, I order chickens, but because of the difficulty in identifying the sex of the fowl, she doesn't know they're roosters until they get a little bit of size on them. But she did get rid of, I think, 3 or maybe 4 roosters. And I am now getting a reasonably uninterrupted night of sleep. So if the 3 acres is the right number, and I don't know how they came up with that, that'll solve at least my problem. But I encourage you to pass this ordinance in terms of what is contained relative to keeping chickens in Poquoson.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
This thought just came to my mind. What about runoff of the manure? How do you control that of farm animals and that?
There's no provision for that
There's
in
no
the
provision on that?
current ordinance, no.
Because isn't there, that should be controlled? You know, you don't want it running into the drainage fields?
So your comment would be,
Is
we should
there-
consider,
Yeah, is there any kind of ordinance on that? How are they removing the waste on that? You don't want it going into our water.
okay, thank you for your
So
comment.
can you look into that?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Your name and address.
My name is Natalie Cherry at 145 West Layden Way. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, if not, I'll close the public hearing and ask for consideration by council.
Mr. Mayor, after consultation with all the rest of my fellow council members, and not all at one time, I didn't hold an illegal meeting. It was one by one. It's a consensus that I would like to move that we postpone this until we can have a work session and come up with specific language for an ordinance to relax the restrictions on pygmy animals. And if it's a problem with different breeds, we could pick the largest of the areas required, or come up with something that the majority of us agree to with specific language, and adding a bee ordinance, since we do not have one. My concern is somebody living in the apartments in a 20 by 30 backyard could put 3 beehives in there and totally disrupt the neighborhood, and there's nothing we can do about it. So I'd like to move that we postpone this till we have a work session, come up with specific language, remand it back to the Planning Commission, and then let them peruse it and send it back to us.
I'll second that. Folks my age may remember an old jingle from way back about a horse is a horse, a course, a course. But in this case, I don't believe that applies. And these little pet animals that are little horses, I don't think they require the same stuff as a real horse does. But just my opinion.
Okay, so what I hear what the motion made and seconded is that council will sit down and come up with its language, remand it to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will consider that language for any necessary changes and then bring it back to us, whether they agree with our changes or not.
Along with some beekeeping regulations.
Yeah, that's all it's there. So I'm good with that. All right, so any other questions or comments? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. Okay? Judy,
Councilwoman
please.
Andrews,
Aye.
Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Councilman Hux,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
and Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
And I will ask for the well wishes of the citizens, because I'm sure there will be 7 different opinions of what is the right answer for farm animals. But, so thank you very much. All right, next item under new business. This is a resolution of support for the current design of Wythe Creek Road project. For those of you that may not even know that there's a Wythe Creek Road project, it's been going on for several years now. Ellen, I'll ask you to come up and just give us a brief, just a very brief announcement, and then also if you would introduce the gentleman here from VDOT.
Actually, the gentleman from VDOT asked me to do the PowerPoint presentation, and they're going to answer questions.
Very good.
But let me introduce you first of all. We have Mike Musamelli in the front row, and I will never say your last name again, Mike, because it took too long to learn to say it. And Daryl Lewis is sitting in the back, if you could wave, Daryl. Mike is the environmental specialist who is handling the environmental permitting for the Wythe Creek Road project. Daryl is the urban programs manager for the district and has been instrumental in getting us some funding for other projects, so we're very happy to have both of them here.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming this
Okay.
evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And we'll see if this.
And I see that y'all did the same thing I do, which is just task Ellen to do it.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Quick and dirty, the status of the Wythe Creek Road widening project. We're wrapping up, or design is coming to a close. Property right-of-way acquisition is underway. And Mike is busily preparing the environmental application package to submit to the various reviewing agencies. And the environmental permit is going to address about 1.2 acres of impacts to waters of the state and the U.S. through shading. The project's going to feature a bridge. The bridge is going to cast shade over the water and over some wetlands, so there may be some loss there. And in addition, 2/10 of an acre for footings for the bridge, so direct impacts to wetlands. Okay. The current design feature, I have a kind of a grocery list of what the design features entail, but the main point here is that this design has resulted from a very long, intense process where the project team, with VDOT leading the project, has gone back and revisited issues and basically found the way to get the most benefit for the least amount of money. The project funding was a little tight, and we also didn't want to end up with a huge amount of additional pavement that would impact citizens and impact the environment. And there was a great deal of value engineering to get what we wanted out of the design without spending that extra money or having a lot of negative impacts. So what the design entails is separating the road from the bike path. The road will go on top of a new bridge that will extend from Poquoson all the way to higher land in Hampton. The existing causeway, which is that earthen fill that's very low and close to the marsh, will stay in place, and it will be used for a bike path and a sidewalk, a combination multi-use path, and it will be a 3-lane reversible concept roadway with a project cost of $51.2 million. Okay. This is just to refresh everybody's memory and make sure we're all talking about the same thing. This is what the road looks like now. We have a Hampton is, we have a causeway mostly on the that's on the Hampton side of the project, which once again, like I said, is a road that is built through the marsh, elevated, but not elevated much if you've ever, I'm sure everybody's here driven over it. So it's very low and close to the ground. And we have a bridge that separates Hampton from Poquoson. Okay, the design features, if you look at the green area, that is new landscaping. What they're going to do is they're going to come and pull up half of the pavement on the existing causeway, and they're going to build that new bridge right alongside and just to the west of the existing causeway. And this is a bit of a close-up view. You can see Carey's Chapel Road, and there we go. This is the new bridge, the new bridge. This is the existing bridge and the existing causeway that now has less pavement and landscaping. The advantages, the bridge is significantly higher than the causeway. You may remember that we lost the ability to use Wythe Creek Road during Hurricane Sandy. We have a bridge that's going to be higher than the flood stage in most instances, so we're going to have a second way in and out of the city if we ever lose Victory Boulevard when we have a storm event. There will be 3 lanes to handle commuter traffic with a minimum loss of property to right-of-way, so our citizens are the least amount of, are having the least amount of impact we can do. And we have a causeway that can be a community amenity. It's going to be safer for our bikers, bicyclists, and our walkers because they're separated from car traffic. It's cheaper because we're using an existing structure. And it's going to look nice. It's going to be a community amenity and allow some access to the water. Now, when you do an environmental application, you have to submit alternatives. And so you have to look at the possibility of not building the project, building it as you've designed it, and then look at a couple other alternative designs. So what I'm going to talk about next is the alternatives that would be considered in the environmental impact or in the environmental application. And some of these have kind of caught regulators' eyes, so just be aware. Alternative 1, remove the causeway. So we have the bridge here, causeway here. We have the HRSD pipeline, which are those 2 pipes you see running above the ground. If you remove the causeway, you have to restore the wetlands where the causeway was located, and you have to also replace those 2 sewer lines with a new sewer that will be horizontally drilled, directionally drilled under the marsh and under the creek. Okay, just found this and thought this might be interesting. One question that came up as we were looking at this is, how old is the causeway? The earliest documentation we can find for the causeway is a 1906 survey. So the environmental impacts caused by the causeway are not new. They've been in there for at least 110 years. Disadvantages of removing the causeway. The cost is $12 million higher than the current project estimate, which is a 23% increase for a total project cost of $63.2 million. Pedestrians and bicyclists would be located on the bridge next to traffic, so it wouldn't be as safe. You would have to relocate the utilities, and you'd have to build a larger bridge. You'd lose the idea of the causeway as a community amenity. In all likelihood, the only thing under the causeway is soil, but if there is something like an an archaeological feature, then what you would find is the project would get delayed as we investigated that. And of course, we'd have to go back to the drawing board, VDOT would, and we'd have to redesign the project and start looking at doing some other permitting work. Another alternative that will be considered is moving the bridge to the east. Currently, the bridge is going to be located on the west side or upstream side of the causeway right alongside of it. But if you put the bridge on the east side, you can draw a straight line and maybe reduce the impacts a little bit. So if you put the bridge over here, you might have a straighter route, a little bit less impacts, but what you're going to end up having to do is relocate that HRSD pipeline. Okay. And the other thing that's going to happen is the city of Poquoson would definitely lose at least 2 commercial businesses. There's a seafood business here, a convenience market here. The other thing is this red line represents the right-of-way. So that is going through a small office building, and I think in all likelihood, my opinion is we would probably lose that business as well. So the disadvantages, $7.6 million increase or 15% over the current budget for a total project cost of $58.8 million. The loss of those businesses because the the bridge is coming in east of where the bridge is coming into the city now. The same thing's happening on the Hampton side. So on the Hampton side, the bridge would land on the higher land on the east side of where it is now, and that would put it on the NASA property. The NASA property has been designated a historic landmark. So that triggers another federal review process, which would further delay and complicate the project. And we would have a lot more redesign and acquisition work because of the losses. And then, kind of the double whammy, this alternative would involve both moving the bridge to the east and removing the causeway. So you have the advantages or the disadvantages of the first two options, plus you have an increase of 46%, $23.5 million, which would drive the total project cost up to $74.7 million. So what is going on is where the VDOT's about to submit this environmental permitting package. What they have asked is that City Council consider kind of affirming the earlier City Council resolution which approved the original design. And if you would consider that and do that, and that resolution is available for your consideration tonight. If that happens, resolutions from Hampton and Poquoson, if approved, will be included in the application package. In addition, there's a further opportunity to advocate for the option you would choose. There will be a public comment period during the environmental review process, and at that time is the appropriate time to send letters of support for the current project. Given how difficult it was to bring this project in at a reasonable budget with the current design, any of these cost increases would put this project in serious jeopardy. This is really the only opportunity the city has had to elevate that road on the Hampton side. It's the staff recommendation that you would consider supporting and advocating for the current design. In the meantime, the project continues, right-of-way acquisition is ongoing, and we're here to answer questions.
Any questions of either Ellen or of the VDOT representatives? So I think what we're being asked to do here, very, very clear and very concise, is we approved this back in 2016. We said, hey, we've looked at the design. We had the public hearings on the design. I believe it was at the high school, so we had lots of good conversation. We proposed that we would, that we liked what the design looked like, that it actually helped us in a lot of regards. And we're being asked tonight to basically say we still like the current design. So that's basically what's before you. Can I say that in a nutshell?
That's great. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
All right, you have one question? Go ahead.
Understanding the current plan would have a bike path all the way from somewhere in the vicinity of the NASA gate all the way in through Poquoson. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion that we adopt the resolution here?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution in support of the current design of the Wythe Creek Road widening project.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we adopt a resolution saying that the previous resolution, which is 4067, is still our path. And if you will, Randy, go ahead and put a note down to formulate a letter for the public hearing for me. And we will sign that as well. Probably the whole council will sign that one. All right, so questions or final comments of council here? Seeing none, Judy, please.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Councilman Hucks,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
and Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carries by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, again, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here this evening. Appreciate your time, okay?
Thank
And good luck, and let us know how else we can help you. All right, next item on the agenda is an ordinance making additional transfers and appropriations for fiscal year 2017. Randy?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to go ahead and ask Tanya O'Connell to come forward and present this, please.
See, Randy's already making me work.
That's right, and I saw Dave Callis tapping on your shoulder several times, asking you for money, is that correct?
Absolutely, and I've told him no.
She's well-trained.
No, Councilmember, in front of you, you have an ordinance to make additional appropriations for the Children's Service Act as well as the Fire Department. Both of these, we're going to receive additional funding that wasn't in the original appropriation, and I just ask that it be carried today.
Okay, any questions or comments, council? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, council, you prepared to move forward with this ordinance? If so?
Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance making additional appropriations and transfers for fiscal year 2016 and 17.
Second.
A motion made and seconded. We move forward with this ordinance, making the additional transfers and appropriations. Questions or comments? Judy, please.
Councilman Canella?
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Councilman Hucks?
Aye.
And Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Very well. And final item on the agenda this evening is a resolution making an appointment to the Wetlands Board. Somebody prepared with a motion on that.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution making appointments to the Wetlands Board for the Eastern Precinct with the following names inserted. The reappointment of Robert Jacobson, whose term will expire August 31st, 2022, and as an alternate, James Cornell Owens, whose term will expire January 31st, 2020.
Second.
A motion made and seconded. We appoint those two individuals to the Wetlands Board. Appreciate that. Judy, please.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Councilman Hucks?
Aye.
Councilman Canella?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Mayor Hunt?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Very good. Comments to the city manager. Randy?
Mr. Mayor, only one thing this evening, a lot of people to thank. When I got to work today, I really began to dig in on potential Tropical Storm Irma, as did a lot of people. And oftentimes with these storm events, we have many days' notice. Today, it was quicker than normal, so I just want to thank a number of people. And I know I'm going to miss somebody, and I don't intend to, but Deputy Chief Bryant, who came in on his vacation today to work this issue, Chief Holloway, Chief Bowen, Battalion Chief Bryan, Tom Jones, Evie and Sherry and Jessica for their work in pushing out the public information this evening, the public works crews that were around the city today, beginning to pick up piles and to deal with existing drainage blockages so we can make sure we're as ready as we're going to get, and the crews from Dominion. It was very nice to see them, and when Melanie called to tell me they were going to be Johnny on the spot, I said, you're already here.
Very well. Thank you for that. And
Thank you.
Virginia Power for working with us as they always do. Comments or directives of council? Let's see. We'll start with Mr. Hucks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no comment tonight.
All right, very well. Councilman Green.
Mr. Mayor, if I may indulge my fellow council members, I have two. One is to try to explain a change in the Poquoson Mobile Pantry Food Bank. Pat and I had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with the director of the food bank of the Virginia Peninsula, and we were told that the auditors don't like the fact that we carry a very large balance in our account, which I thought was a good thing, but they don't see it that way. And then we were told that we are the only mobile pantry that purchases only meat at 19 cents a pound from the pantry. The rest of them purchase other foodstuffs, and they charge them a flat fee of $250 a month. We opted to be designated a normal food pantry, so we will pay the $250 a month, but we will get $150 worth of additional foodstuffs, not just meat. And they changed it this past time, and it is quite a bit more food, so it'll serve our clients a lot better. And we typically, through the generosity of the Lions, the Exchange, the Kiwanis, the American Legion, we typically raise $3,000 a year, and that would cover the $250 a month. So we have made that change, and we did see a significant significant increase in the amount of food, so it'll help our clients. The other thing is I'd like to try to get a consensus. A couple of weeks ago, I was called by one of our local marine contractors, and he informed me that we are the only municipality that for the maximum size of a covered boat lift, we have specific dimensions, which are 18 by 36. All the rest of the municipalities go by the Corps of Engineers restriction of anything 700 square feet or less does not require a permit from VMRC or the Corps of Engineers. So to give our citizens flexibility, and he was telling me that more and more people are raising larger boats. So this, if we change our ordinance to agree with the Corps 700 square feet or less, he can change the dimensions to get a longer boat covered under the slip. And we've already got in our ordinance the type of roof that it has to be. VMRC does not like flat roofs because it tends to lend people to get on top of them or store stuff on them. So we're already in compliance with that. So I'd just like to try to get a consensus. If the rest of y'all agree, we could change that to a square footage rather than a specific dimension.
All right, so Randy, that would have to go down through the planning commission?
Yes, sir, it would.
So, anybody have a problem taking that on and telling the planning commission to go forth and prosper? No. Very good. That's a consensus. All right, we'll remand that to the planning commission. Thank you, buddy. Councilman Cannella.
Nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very well. Councilman Southall.
I'd like to congratulate Ms. Marceller and Keith Five for their awards. They're well-deserved. And to thank Bob McCracken for his participation in the City Council. And thank those at home and the people here for taking the time to pay attention to the city government. And thank the city staff for the excellent work that they're doing, and welcome our new city finance officer.
Okay, very well. Councilwoman Andrews. Sorry.
I just want to second everything Buddy said. That's what I had on my list. But I also wanted to say I was able to attend the school convocation for the first time, and boy, was I impressed. I went home and told my husband, it really makes me want to go back and get another degree and be a teacher after attending that. I was just really impressed. We have some great teachers, and I just want to wish them the best of luck as they go into their school year.
Okay. Mr. Vice Mayor.
I was at the opening convocation as well, and I agree with everything Councilwoman Andrews said. I want to compliment some people. I don't have their names, but I'll tell you the situation. Down at Messick Point, a bunch of folks apparently were having some kind of party, and there were like beer bottles and things like that broken all over several of the parking places where people often walk and take their dogs and things. A group of teenage volunteers, and I apologize for not having more info about it, but they got together, got push brooms and buckets and shovels, and went out there and cleaned up the entire mess Sunday afternoon. And I just wanted to commend whoever they are. You know, we appreciate you, and you did good. And that's all.
Okay. And I don't have anything else this evening, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Judy, please.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Councilman Cannella,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Councilman Hucks,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
and Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Very well. We are adjourned.